Yo, what's up, guys? We got some basketball talk today. The NBA trade deadline has just ended, of course, and holy shit, obviously it was an incredible last week and a half for the NBA. Of course, obviously, with the highlighted trade of Luka Doncic going to the Los Angeles Lakers for Anthony Davis, of course. Obviously, groundbreaking trade. Obviously, shook the NBA world like no tomorrow. Then we obviously saw some massive trades happening with the San Antonio Spurs getting De'Aaron Fox, of course. Obviously, the Mavericks got Anthony Davis in the return for Doncic. Jimmy Butler obviously went to the Golden State Warriors. Wiggins went to the Heat. A lot of trades happening in NBA trade deadline day. And ironically enough, a couple days before the Super Bowl, of course, right? So that seems to be pretty ironic, of course. But obviously, here in Toronto, of course, the big trade for the Raptors obviously was trading for Brandon Ingram. Of course, the Raptors obviously traded Davion Mitchell to the Miami Heat, and they also acquired James Wiseman from the Indiana Pacers. So obviously, Davion Mitchell goes to the Miami Heat for PJ Tucker and a second-round pick. Listen, I like Davion Mitchell. He's a good player, solid defensively, especially on the perimeter. But when you got a guy like Jamal Shead, who's very similar to Davion Mitchell, Jamal Shead undrafted by the Raptors, of course, as well. A guy who's really developed into his own these last 6 months into the season, of course. And I felt the Raptors, and clearly the Raptors felt that it was time to move on from Davion Mitchell, give a greater role to Jamal Shead. Of course, that's why they moved him on and get a veteran guy like PJ Tucker. Now, it's not for sure if PJ Tucker's going to stay with the Raptors, of course, but to have him back in Toronto, of course, if he does stay, he's another leader you can have in the locker room. It's always good for the Raptors, right? And then obviously, of course, you get James Wiseman, from Indiana. The guy was a second overall pick of 2020. Obviously, Golden State Warriors took him over LaMelo Ball. I'm sure they're regretting taking him over LaMelo. James Wiseman got traded to the Pistons. He's been battling a lot of injuries in his career. He went to Indiana. So he hasn't had the best luck in his NBA career. So maybe he comes to Toronto. Obviously with the Raptors getting rid of Kelly Olynyk, can come in, be a backup center to Jakob Poeltl, maybe get some minutes if he's healthy. Maybe a fresh start for James Wiseman is good for him, because the kid obviously was a second-round pick and he has potential to be a good player, right? So we'll see if he develops at all with the Raptors. But it's not a big gamble for Masai Ujiri just to get rid of an unconditional second-round pick for James Wiseman. Now, obviously, the biggest trade-up for the Raptors was last night with Brandon Ingram coming to Toronto for Bruce Brown, Kelly Olynyk, a protected first-round pick, and a second-round pick. It's a top 4 protected first-round pick. So obviously, guys, the big question mark is, why trade for Brandon Ingram? And now, obviously, we're thinking to ourselves, it's a rebuilding year. The Raptors are 16-35. They're one of the worst teams in the East, one of the worst teams in the NBA. But the Raptors have been winning some games consistently. Obviously, they won 5 in a row at one point. And very frustrating, if you ask me, guys, because I wanted the Raptors to tank. I wanted them to possibly get a lottery pick, maybe possibly draft Cooper Flag. But it seems like now that the Raptors getting a guy like Brandon Ingram, of course, the guy automatically averages the most points on your team, 22 points per game. Obviously, Brandon Ingram has had a lot of injuries in the past. He hasn't played since December 7th, so there's a lot of question marks regarding his health. And he's an unrestricted free agent at the end of the year, obviously, right? So we'll have to see, guys, what happens with the Raptors. Now, obviously, there's a lot of questions about what do the Raptors do now? Is this just a retool instead of a rebuild? Are the Raptors trying to get to a play-in now? Do I like the trade? Listen, so obviously, I like the trade. Of course, Brandon Ingram's a nice player. The guy's a scorer. He's a very good mid-range scorer. Like I said, he was averaging 22 points a game. Really solid player for the Raptors, of course, to bring in. But like I said, guys, we're rebuilding. Is it the best time to be making a trade like this for a guy like Brandon Ingram? Obviously, it could be a yes and no question, of course. Now, we have to wait and see where the Raptors finish in the standings, of course. But Brandon Ingram, if he could stay healthy, he automatically makes the Raptors a way better basketball team. Now, obviously, you get rid of a guy like Kelly Olynyk. You get rid of some salary. With Brandon Ingram, like I said, being an unrestricted free agent, who knows if the Raptors keep him? Like I also said, you get rid of Davion Mitchell. That's more salary. PJ Tucker is a free agent also at the end of the year. So Raptors are really dumping out a lot of salary guys for unrestricted guys. So when the offseason comes, they have a lot of cap room, right? But I will say this, though. Brandon Ingram, like I say, he's a really nice player, has had health injuries. But if the Raptors do decide to keep Brandon Ingram, He is a really good piece for them, right? But obviously, like I said, the timing's weird because we're rebuilding. It's rebuilding phase. Now you get a guy like this. It's like, are you rebuilding now? Or like I said, you're retooling. So, like, it's really weird for Masai Ujiri to make a trade like this. But if it doesn't work out, like I said, you let him go at the end of the year. You get as a free agent. You obviously let go of some cap guys like Bruce Brown and Kelly Olynyk, who are making a shit ton of money, of course. And then obviously, but if Brandon Ingram does come back to Toronto as healthy as he can be, plays well, scoring the way he can be, shit, man, you got a really good front court with Pirtle, Brown, Barnes. You got RJ and Quickly in the backcourt there, and you add Ingram on top of that. That is a really intriguing starting five and a long, big starting five, of course. So, obviously, there's some question marks in regarding Masai Ujiri's motives, and a lot of people are questioning, why did you make this trade now? Listen, obviously, there's going to be a lot of questions why you make this trade. Like what I've been saying at the beginning of the video, you got a guy like Cooper Flagg, who could be a really solid player in the NBA, guys, who can really change a franchise. And for the Raptors to go win these amount of games now, you really take yourself out of the running for the first overall pick. Obviously, some really difficult choices there. But, like I said, guys, I'm not going to question Masai Ujiri, right? Because ever since he brought a banner home to Toronto, I'm going to let Masai Ujiri do his thing. Obviously, there's a lot more questions than answers, of course, regarding this trade. We haven't heard yet him and Bobby Webster's answerings as to why they made the trade. But I'm excited to see what their future holds for the Raptors moving forward, guys. And I think that they have a bright future ahead of them. And listen, like I said, you keep Brandon Ingram or you don't. He's a solid player that you can build around. Obviously, somebody's going to go to the bench. Probably a guy like Grady Dick. Maybe bring him off the bench now, who's been scoring well. Obviously, his scoring has dipped a bit. But I still like Grady coming off the bench. He can give you some really good scoring off the bench, guys. So, listen, more depth for the Raptors. It's better for them. And listen, it's a questionable trade, of course, but let's wait and see what happens with Brandon Ingram and the Raptors, guys, and let's see if he can get healthy and get back on the floor for them. But it's a trade, guys, that you got rid of Pascal Siakam last year. You turned that into Ingram, Ochai, and Jacoby Walter. Listen, that's a great trade if you ask me. Listen, Brandon Ingram does make a lot of money, sure, but like I said, guys, at the end of the year, it doesn't work out, you let him walk, though, guys. But it has been an interesting NBA trade deadline, guys. It has been something that we have never seen before. So many great players being traded to different teams, teams rebuilding, teams reshaping their entire roster. It's crazy to think Kevin Durant almost got traded. There was talk about him going to Memphis, going back to Golden State. Lots of things happened this week in the NBA, guys. Raptors were involved in some trades. Really nice to see, guys. The NBA never short of amazement and entertainment when it comes to making trades and signing free agents and all that other stuff. It was an incredible last couple days in regards to the NBA. But like I said, guys, Brandon Ingram, I like the player. It's a decent trade. Well, the question is now, will it benefit the Raptors or will it hurt the Raptors draft stock? Obviously, we're more concerned about getting a top lottery pick than about winning games and getting into a play-in and playing in the playoffs for no damn reason, right? So let's wait and see what happens with the Raptors. Let's see what Brandon Ingram gets back. Obviously we're losing some guys like Davion Mitchell, Olynyk, and Brown. Those guys are probably good in the locker room. But for the Raptors, salary-wise, it's a good trade for them to get rid of guys, and relieve some cap room for them. And getting a guy like Brandon Ingram is always a plus. A guy who can score at the middle. He can take the three. He can drive to the lane, guys. He is a really good player to add to the Raptors roster. The question is, why now? Why did they decide to trade for him now? And will they extend him at the end of the season? And will he be able to stay healthy and play a certain amount of games for the Raptors? But guys, that's it for this video today. Thank you very much for watching. As always, guys, like this video. Subscribe if you guys want to see more content. Go Raptors, go, guys. And remember, if you do not watch sports, you're a more. Ciao, guys.